Für mich war Ahmadiyya ein rotes Tuch. Also zu dem Zeitpunkt.
For me back then, Ahmadiyya was like a red flag. I thought they were kuffar, apostates, so why would I go there? But in the end, my desire to meet other Muslims and to pray in a mosque was so strong that I convinced myself, okay, I'll give it a chance. Maybe I can even invite some of them to what I believed was the true Islam.
Und vielleicht kann ich den einen oder anderen auch zum wahren Islam einladen. Ja, mein Name ist Afifa Madia.
My name is Afifa Maria Albrecht Mahmoud. I'm 28 years old and my roots are Italian. I was actually raised Catholic and I was also baptized, so faith has always played a role in our home. That means I also went to communion service and we prayed every night before going to bed. And so faith has always been present in our lives. I remember once telling the priest that sometimes when I sat very quietly, I felt as though Allah Ta'ala, or God in this case, was gently stroking my head. I always saw him as something positive, as someone who protects you and to whom you can turn, never as a punishing or harsh God.
Ich habe angefangen im Alter von 12.
I began taking an interest in Islam at the age of 12, but I have to say that Muslim women wearing the hijab had always fascinated me. Even as a small child, whenever I saw women in hijab, I would watch them and think how beautiful it looked. I remember once taking a scarf, tying it around my head like a hijab, and looking at myself in the mirror, feeling intrigued. It was something that had always been within me, but my conscious and deliberate interest in Islam truly began around the age of 12. At some point at this age, I then asked my father to get me a Quran because I wanted to read it. And subhanAllah, he ordered one blindly and the Quran of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community arrived. That means right from the beginning, my connection to Islam really came from a very pure source. To me, it was completely logical that a new prophet appeared named Muhammad, who brought a final religion that we must follow. And I immediately felt a duty to follow his message. There's also this verse in the Quran where it says that the people of the scripture, when they hear about the Holy Prophet, Muhammad, peace be upon him, recognize the message, they recognize him as they recognize their own sons. And that's how I perceived it too. For me, it was not a question at all that this was true. I then basically recited the Shahada for myself, learned how to perform namaz, and memorized some Quranic surahs.
Und meine Familie hat das immer so ein bisschen wahrgenommen am Rande, aber sie hielten es halt.
My family kind of noticed it on the sidelines, but they thought it was just a phase. Until one day, I finally gathered the courage and told them very clearly, no, I want to convert to Islam. My father reacted very emotionally and said, we don't change our religion. We're born Christians and we will die as Christians. We're proud Italians. We don't do such things. For me as a child, that was simply not up for discussion. My father had said it, my parents had said it, and so that's it. I carried a deep fear in my heart that if I continued practicing Islam, I might lose my parents. So then, I decided to turn to Christianity for the time being, to read the Bible, to engage with Christianity, and somewhere, somehow, also try to refute Islam for myself, because I was simply afraid of the consequences if I continued to believe in Islam. I kept trying to convince myself of Christianity. I even thrived in religious education, went through with my confirmation, and almost tried to force myself to believe in it.
Ich quasi versucht, da wirklich schon fast zu zwingen, daran zu glauben. Mir hat aber immer im Christentum.
But for me, Christianity was always missing one essential perspective. I had the feeling that in Christianity, if you want to fully dedicate yourself to God as a woman, your only choice is to become a nun. Only then can you fully dedicate yourself to God. But in everyday life, you don't really have the opportunity to fully concentrate on God. In Islam, however, I noticed that every Muslim woman basically lives like a nun. She covers herself, reads the Quran, prays 5 times a day, gets up at night to pray. But she can also marry, have children, and raise them. And she has a guideline for her whole life in the Quran. That was something that deeply fascinated me about Islam. In Christianity, however, I felt a great inner conflict. As though I couldn't really, truly reach Allah, couldn't connect with God, my Creator, in the same way that I can in Islam.
Es war ein starker innerer Konflikt, bis ich irgendwann ungefähr im Alter von.
It was a deep inner conflict until around the age of 16. Through a gradual process, I finally told myself, I have to acknowledge this now. I can no longer deny what is in my heart. I am a Muslim at heart. I believe in it, and now I will openly declare it. And so I did. When I officially declared myself a Muslim, I thought my journey would finally come to an end. But that wasn't the case. Instead, I was faced with an entirely new set of challenges. I didn't know which sect or group within Islam was the right one.
Im Islam richtig ist. Ich hatte mit Schiiten Kontakt, ich hatte mit Sunniten Kontakt.
I had contact with Shia Muslims, I had contact with Sunni Muslims, and through social media, I also connected for the very first time with converts to Islam. They then invited me to a WhatsApp group where many members were influenced by Salafism and shared their views. That's how I first came to know their interpretation of Islam. I already felt a certain common ground with these women. Some were also converts, while others had been born into Muslim families whose parents, for example, didn't practice Islam, but who had rediscovered the faith for themselves.
Die aber selber den Glauben für sich neu entdeckt haben. Ich habe mich sehr viel ausgetauscht und verstanden gefühlt das erste Mal, wie schwierig
I exchanged many thoughts with them, and for the very first time, I truly felt understood. Understood about how difficult it is to live in a family that does not practice Islam, and to be the only one who does. I also understood how challenging it is in this society with its prejudices against the hijab and against Islam in general. The problem was that the version of Islam I encountered there somehow felt empty. Outwardly, everything was in place. Some women wore the niqab, they married very young and quickly had children. Visually, everything was there. But the inner spirit, it was missing. I never truly felt any essence there. The search for which Islam is truly correct, for what is right and what is wrong, and the disputes and disagreements that had been learned over time were very present in this group, or among these Muslims. And I always wondered why Allah Ta'ala had not sent a person who shows us what is truly right for today's time. Because the Quran is undoubtedly from Allah Ta'ala, and we have the ahadith. But who interprets them for us today? Who can tell us today what is correct and what is not? That was a great despair I felt inside.
Verzweiflung, die ich in mir gespürt habe. Es kam dann schließlich dazu, dass ich
Eventually, the 3rd of October was approaching, and I decided I wanted to visit a mosque for the first time. In Germany, October 3rd is the nationwide Open Mosque Day. My plan was to go to a Sunni mosque where some Salafi preachers were active. A friend had invited me, and I pleaded with my mother, please, just let me go to a mosque once. At that time, I was already performing my prayers, but they were always alone. I had never experienced praying in congregation, and I longed to know what it felt like to stand and pray in a mosque. After some convincing, my mother finally gave in and said, all right, you can go, but just this once. And then she said, I looked it up, and there's actually an Ahmadiyya mosque nearby, just around the corner. We're going out anyways, so we could drop you off there. For me back then, Ahmadiyya was like a red flag. I thought they were kuffar, apostates, so why would I go there?
Das sind Abtrünnige, was soll ich denn dort, ja? Aber schließlich habe ich mich dann doch dazu entschieden.
But in the end, my desire to meet other Muslims and to pray in a mosque was so strong that I convinced myself, okay, I'll give it a chance. Maybe I can even invite some of them to what I believed was the true Islam. All said and done, I went to the mosque. As soon as I arrived, an Ahmadi sister approached me, and we ended up talking for hours. She even gave me some of the writings of the promised Messiah, peace be upon him. From that moment, a new chapter of searching began, along with an inner conflict. I read all of the books, and then not long before the school holidays, I had to change schools due to various problems. I was feeling very desperate. On the very last day before the holidays, I prayed istikhara. My plan was to enroll in a school where many Muslims studied, thinking this would be a good opportunity to be among more Muslims. While we were driving there, I prayed again. If this is good for me, let everything work out smoothly. If not, then let it be otherwise.
Dann soll alles gut gehen und wenn nicht, dann nicht. Plötzlich hat es angefangen, sehr stark zu regnen.
Suddenly, it began pouring rain and a thunderstorm rolled in. We kept driving in circles, unable to find the school at all. It was frustrating to the point of madness. Eventually, my mother and I gave up. She said, all right, let's just pick up your brother from school first and then figure it out. When we arrived at my brother's school, my mother suddenly said, you know what? You've got your documents with you. Why don't you just ask here if you can transfer to this school instead? I agreed and then I went inside. By chance, the principal happened to be in the hallway. He came over, listened, and without hesitation, he said, no problem, you can join right after the holidays. We'll take you. What was special was that when I arrived at the new school after the summer holidays, we immediately had a class trip. There, I noticed a girl wearing a hijab, and I casually asked her if she wanted to join me for a walk. That was how our first conversation began. It turned out she was an Ahmadi Muslim. And as it happened, there were 2 other Ahmadi girls in our year as well. That was such a blessing for me because from that moment on, I no longer had to spend my school breaks researching Islam alone. I now had Ahmadi Muslim classmates I could actually speak to, face to face, discuss with, and exchange ideas. My first instinct, however, was to try to convince them to leave Ahmadiyyat. I told them, look, this is just a reform movement. You have to follow the original teachings of Islam. But after a lot of research, long discussions, and even heated arguments, I came to realize that this was, in fact, the true teachings of Islam. Still, there was one point I simply could not accept. I thought to myself, if he truly was a prophet, then those who reject him are disbelievers because they have denied a prophet of God. That would apply to 99% of Muslims. And I could not bring myself in either my mind or my heart to declare 99% of Muslims as non-Muslims. This became my main stumbling block, even though I sincerely tried to accept all of the teachings of the Jamaat. On my desk, I even kept a picture of a Hazur. I would often say, this man has something real, a nur, about him. Yet this one point continued to trouble me deeply. Then I learned about the Lahori Jamaat, how there had been a split in the community, and how the Lahoris did not believe that the founder was a prophet. Looking at it now, I can clearly see the difference. Our Jamaat has flourished, spreading to all corners of the world, while their movement has withered and not borne fruit. That was the turning point for me. I finally said to myself, no, this is the truth, and I accept it completely. I told my Ahmadi sisters that I would definitely do my bai'at on the Jalsa Salana in 2015. And Alhamdulillah, that's exactly what I did.
Werde ich Bai'at machen und das habe ich dann auch gemacht, Alhamdulillah.